Caroline, hello. It's so wonderful to see you here today. I have so much energy whenever I spend time with you. So I'm really excited you can join us today to talk about all things disability inclusion and a bit about your story, we hope today. As a quick introduction, Caroline Casey. I mean, where do I start? Businesswoman, founder of Valuable 500, award-winning social entrepreneur, campaigner, activist, and the
Troublemaker.
important, absolutely, an adventurer as well, which
Yeah,
I'm sure
definitely.
we'll hear about. It's been a really busy couple of months, hasn't it? In the start of the year with so many conferences. We had the Zero Project Awards, which Sense International were excited to be at and won an award for some of
Yeah.
our work. And then the Global Disability Summit as well. So interesting. Disability awareness has been quite high. How's the last couple of months been for you?
It always is quite, I always think the first part of the year is busy. But before I begin, I just want to give an audio description of myself, because I myself I'm registered blind and have low vision. So I'm just going to describe myself. I have very white blonde hair. I'm a 53-year-old woman, very white skin, big thick black glasses, and a black Frida Kahlo t-shirt. And I'm sitting outside in Umbria, Italy, with the birds tweeting. So that's what I look like. And what the last few months have been, yeah, because the Global Disability Summit comes around every 3 years. So that was in April. And then we had the Zero conference in March. And I'm also the president of the International Agency for the Prevention of Blindness. So I've just come back from Nepal. So it feels like, yeah, there's a lot of energy out there at the moment. And now the big thing is to capture that energy and convert that energy and intention into sustainable action that really drives the system change we want, you know? And I think what I am always so hopeful of is that all of these individual kind of actions are joining together to create really this kind of movement or collaboration or collective action that nobody can ignore, regardless of what people's experience are with disability, you know? So it's when we come
Yeah.
together. Yeah.
Amazing. And I mean, there was incredible audience at all of those conferences. And I think having experienced some of that was wonderful to see you ensuring, Caroline, that everyone went away with some action and intended action as well. So thank you
Yeah.
for
People know I'm
leading
obsessed
those.
around accountability,
Mm,
whether you fail or you achieve, it's to take responsibility for that. And just to be very careful that when we say we'll do something, we need to deliver on it. And if we don't, take responsibility for that, because I think in the world right now, we really need people to commit and to make sure they follow up. And moderating those conferences was incredible. You know, from the stage you can say, so make sure you follow up. So yes,
not
it's
least
been a
in the
great.
electric blue suit that you wore. Fabulous. Can
Yeah.
we take a bit of a step back, Caroline? I mean, your story is just so incredible. And I, I've seen your TED talk from all those years ago, where you talk about why and how you came to be where you are today. Can you share a little bit about your story?
Well, there's kind of two highlights about why I am where I am today. And one has to do with a country and western song by Johnny Cash called A Boy Named Sue. And the other is to do with an elephant. So they're quite interesting highlights. But I was born in 1971. I was diagnosed with ocular albinism at 6 months. Um, just before my parents were choosing which school I was to go to, um, they decided they would send me to a mainstream school, um, because my father really believed in this concept that was captured in this Johnny Cash song, A Boy Named Sue, that the world is really tough. And certainly back then, it wasn't designed to allow people with disabilities or who were visually impaired or hearing impaired to live their best potential. And so they decided to send me to school. I thought I just had myopia, you know, like lots of other kids. I didn't know that I had ocular albinism with only about a half foot clear vision. So I went to a mainstream school with no understanding that I was that poorly sighted. And then I went through school, quite a clumsy child, I would have thought, but And then on my 17th birthday, they gave me a driving lesson for my birthday. Not that we could have afforded it or anything else, but it was the time I discovered that actually I had such a significant condition. And I hid it then for 11 years because I couldn't understand. I couldn't relate to it. I mean, I'd gone through school,
Mm.
like, and so I didn't talk about it for 11 years. And eventually I was working for a management consultancy firm, Accenture, at 28 years old. And I came out of the disability closet. And I needed to give my eyes some time to rest because I had temporarily damaged them. And how I did that was to fulfill a childhood dream to become Mowgli from the Jungle Book. And how I did that was I went across India, 1,000 kilometers on an elephant, and I raised enough money for 6,000 cataract operations. And at that 28-year-old self, I was exposed to the exclusion crisis of disability and also the avoidable sight loss crisis that exists. And from that
Mm.
day on, I came back from India and became a troublemaker and activist to work in disability inclusion, and very particularly to work about how we could bring the power and influence and force of business to be part of changing the landscape for people with disabilities and their families. So that's what I've been doing for 25 years. And now I'm the president of the IAPB, which is like a cult full circle, which is incredible
Yeah.
25 years later. Yeah.
Wow. Thanks to the Indian elephant that you
Yeah, I
spent
know.
many a day on.
4.5 months. And can I just tell you, as a woman with albinism, sitting on an elephant, I was quite, my skin was pink and bitten by mosquitoes, but I will say it was one of the most liberating things I've ever done.
Mm.
My sight was not what got in the way. It was
Mm.
really just more about me learning how to not fight my sight, but to use and be with what vision that I have, and to stop always trying to be better than it. And
Yeah.
that was a really big moment in my life. It was one of those big inflection moments. Yeah.
Embrace it, and
Yeah.
use that energy
Yeah.
to fight and support others,
Yeah.
in their journey forward. So you talked a bit about that one moment that made you realize what your vocation was, I suppose, and what you need to do. Were there any moments where you felt that you experienced true inclusion and possibilities that were open for you at any stage?
Well, I think for me, I've had lots of defining moments or moments of inflection. What I was to do when I came off that elephant, it wasn't even a choice. It sort of hit me in the head. Like there was no
Mm.
way I could walk away from it because I saw this scale of exclusion,
Mm.
pandemic proportions. And I just
Mm.
didn't understand why. I mean, I just don't, I still to this day do not understand why we design exclusion into our world, why people with disabilities are not part of a design process, considering 1.3 billion of us with a mother and a father. That's 54% of our global economy before we even talk about age. It's so strange to me, Wendy, that we have a blind eye, excuse the pun,
Yeah.
for accessibility and inclusion for everyone. I really don't understand it. And that's really about intention and action put together. So the moment for me, I think it's not a brilliant moment in anybody else's world, but when I came back off the elephant, I mean, you must remember the first time I was starting to speak about vision impairment. And I found myself in a room with a whole load of people in Ireland and England who also had albinism, and several who had ocular albinism. And I remember, you know, just looking around and going, oh my God, I'm not on my own. This
Mm.
isn't, there are other people who understand that. I could even see the way they were walking was the way that I walk, the way they held their heads to a page or a phone. And it was just,
Mm.
oh my goodness, it was a moment of not having to perform to constantly fit in, right? It was a level playing field in that moment. And particularly with ocular albinism, because it's such a distinctive condition, right? So it was a moment of, wow. And I think that's probably where I understood the power of community and collective action and collaboration together. So that was a big moment for me. And I think another big moment for me really made me quite, once again, like kind of geeky, childish, was when I got to put on the Ray-Ban glasses with the Be My Eyes text in them,
Yeah.
which that was only a few months ago in Orlando. And you're like, oh my
Mm,
goodness, wow, like wow, here is like where technology.
mm,
Another time is when I sat in the driverless car in the US. And, because I obviously always wanted to drive cars and race motorbikes. And then I heard the devastating news that actually visually impaired and blind people aren't going to be able to drive a car because the insurance companies won't let
oh
us.
gosh.
But, so these are these sort of the technical advances are these moments about what
Mm,
is possible, right?
mm,
It's extraordinary. And then just seeing other people like me and the importance of us coming together. Um, and my last 25 years have been literally full of those amazing moments, but they've also been full of moments of unnecessary exclusion that actually are devastating when you pile them on top of each other for so many people. They're so unnecessary and they don't need to exist. So,
yeah. That collectiveness, though, is so powerful, isn't it?
yeah.
And we at Sense International, they're there for people who have no other support and often have nowhere to turn to. So it's so important in your story to have had that moment, and um, obviously must have driven you forward for the valuable 500.
I think, my voice always shakes when I talk about the emotion behind what we do. And I'm glad, and I don't ever want that to change. But the idea of being othered, always being the only one or othered, is very lonely. And I often quote Maya Angelou's quote, there's no greater agony than an untold story inside yourself. That you can't tell your story when you're not around people that are like you, or you're trying to fit into somebody else's version of what it
Mm,
might be. And with Sense International and having been at a few of your events, it's so important to find like-minded people together who that you don't have to be something else, right? People just get it, and there's a massive freedom and liberation in that. And that sense of personal freedom is at the core of the Valuable 500. People often say to me, why did you create the Valuable 500? And I can tell you I created it because my father died, and that grief channeled my frustration that we had never seen what I believe accelerated action around disability inclusion in business. It had still remained so on the edges, and I had seen other areas of inclusion invested in. And for me, the Valuable 500 was to really radically revolutionize how disability was in business. And the only way I understood that after years of working was to engage the CEOs at the top of the business. We wanted to break the CEO silence on disability inclusion to stop this haphazard, non sort of strategic or systemic investment in disability. And so I mean, it was a mighty idea at the beginning, and that was to get 500 of the world's most influential CEOs of the most influential brands, not to
mm,
give us their money, but to actually give their attention and intention and accountability to improving disability performance at the top of their business. Because the choices that a leader makes affects how a business is run. And I really believed when I talked to CEOs and our team did no CEO disagreed with the idea that every human is valuable, equally valuable. And, we also discovered that 11% of the CEOs in the world had a disability, and 4 out of 5 of them were not disclosing it. We discovered that many CEOs had
wow.
family members or children. They weren't disclosing it. So it was to break that silence. I
Mm,
don't see that disability makes a human being less than. We shouldn't be defined by it, and we shouldn't have to compete for our agency, for our own sovereignty as human beings. So it really was a profound and very activist move. And we launched it on the main stage of the World Economic Forum in Davos, not on some inspiring stage, with 5 of the world's most influential CEOs, led by Paul Poman, who was the CEO of Unilever at the time. And like, when do we make history? Like in 2 years and 4 months, we had 523 of the most influential CEOs in the world, making up 22 million employees and 23 trillion in market cap. So don't tell me we can't do something amazing with that.
and perhaps we need to tell some of our other leaders to do that, to bring that collective action together, because you had something special that obviously others wanted to be part of.
I think that, first of all, the thing that is so profound about the valuable 500, there was a magic. There was a
Mm,
magic in it. And I think there's a few critical reasons it worked. We use this duality approach of the head and the heart. So the head is the business case for this, the 13 trillion, that disability experience is a source of innovation, that we remember that touch tones or touch screens are all because of the disability experience. SMS texting is for deaf, remote controls for blind people, all the things that we hear about. Um, but there's also the heart. It's the human story. It's the human story of how we live in the world and to have personal freedom. So I think that really resonated. But the second thing is this idea of working together, safety in numbers, to be part of something, to belong, to do
mm,
something that was going to shift a dial and to change something. I think that was really, really compelling for people. And also, I think the idea of doing something that wasn't done before. And it wasn't about blame. We weren't looking at the business and the CEOs and saying, how could you? How dare you? Why would you? It was, come with us and change together. Let's do this together and let's learn together and fail together and try together. There was something very open about it. Um, yeah, so I think there was, Wendy, it was really magical. It was something very special about what we did, and you've got to remember half of it was done in COVID. So,
oh, wow.
it was crazy, and it was a time when COVID happened. I nearly felt I was reblinded again because everything now was on Zoom or Teams, and I mean I can't see your face now, and I had to sort of in COVID relearn again because in Ireland you couldn't walk 6 feet and near people, and I didn't know what 6 feet was or wasn't. I couldn't see the screen, I couldn't see chat. And then that opportunity of COVID, that, we would never, ever, ever come away or go into a conference without captioning. That was, we
Mm.
proved we could change. Business proved it could change. Technology proved, and I think it was an accelerator of
Yeah.
what needs to be done.
And now, leaping forwards, technology really is accelerating, isn't it? And part of the reason why Sense International launched a global deafblindness resource hub is that we need to be able to reach and even more people, and that gives us the opportunity, but also fundamentally not to leave anyone behind. And technology is still learning, isn't it, in terms of accessibility? Do you think the tech giants there have quite got it in terms of accessibility?
I think so. I think, first of all, a lot of organizations, people in the organizations who are super passionate about accessibility, I mean, they're there. Like I could give you a list of amazing names: Sarah Herlinger from Apple, Christopher Patno in Google, Jenny Leigh Fleury in Microsoft. There's some incredible names, and they're just to mention a few. And now we're seeing, because those positions are being given,
Mm,
they're high up the value chain in the business, so it's been seen as serious. So I think it's really coming. I don't think it's reached where it needs to get to, but yes, it is definitely more visible and taken seriously and invested in. That's really important. But when you have these big giants like the Microsoft, the Googles, and the Salesforces and the Apples all talking together on panels and stages, that something is happening, that this opportunity is massive. And you have, the European Accessibility Act coming in literally weeks' time. And so there's huge stuff happening. And thank God for it. But when I think about deaf blindness, do I think that people understand deaf blindness? No, I don't. And at the Global Disability Summit, I was actually interviewing somebody on a panel who was part of the panel with deaf blindness. And I think it's kind of one of those issues that's quite invisible in the accessibility or disability
mm,
experience, or has been, because I think people just can't get their heads around it, right? They just, how? How?
mm,
Can this happen? But therefore, that is the greatest opportunity for tech designers in the world, because these tech people love challenges. They love it. These are their problem solvers. So it's essentially to bring this community of deafblind people to their attention and say, come on, work with us, co-create, show us the power of technology, show us what we can do with the deafblind community, working with them. And I think there's something exceptionally exciting by people who are passionate about what technology can do. So this is why the Resource Hub is like so exciting. And it's also, once again, the combination of bringing multiple minds together to sort out problems, which I think is
I
great.
absolutely agree. I think being able to see, as you say, those tech giants coming together, you don't often see them working together. So being able to do that is absolutely amazing. And I am excited about the future, but the co-creation has to start with the people that they're trying to support. So absolutely putting people with deaf blindness at the heart of that co-creation is what we really believe in as well at Sense International. So what would your dream for the future be that would help us for ensuring that disability continues to be spoken about, that exclusion is diminished, and that your values for inclusion and accessibility can continue to be fired up as they always will be, Caroline?
Well, I have several things that I would love. I mean, that we would have normalized the inclusion of people with disabilities and their family and the aging population in every design aspect of what we're building, designing, creating. That's programmatic tools, projects, governments, education systems, transport. I really believe the voice and experience of disability needs to be at the table. It needs to be paid for at the table. We don't need your favors, thank you. It's paying for that experience and recognizing that. I believe accessibility is a hugely important human right for everybody. It's not just about disability, it's about accessibility in its broadest term. And if our world lived in that concept of accessibility and representation for all, there would be no issues. I often say if we had the disability experience design airports, they would be great for everyone, right? Like, I mean, airports are just so stressful. So, I mean, for me, is having accessibility and representation and having the people who experience things differently at every part of the architecture of how we live and experience the world. I think that's really important. But and when we come to deaf blindness as well, and I have to be very careful because I can get quite agitated when people are talking about, well, we can't help everybody, and the numbers for this don't make a good return on investment. So we argue about, how many people have Duchenne's muscular dystrophy? So is there enough market for the pharma companies to produce the drugs? And I'm just like, are you absolutely kidding me? Every single life is important, and we have no right. None of us could get to choose one life is more important than the rest. And I believe if we were to design in partnership with the deaf-blind community, I actually think we would create the most accessible and inclusive experiences on the planet. Because if we can do that for deaf-blind and their families, we're doing it for everybody. And I'm talking about the experience about the deaf-blind community, whether they're Black, whether they're LGBTQIA, whatever faith they come from, whatever race, the whole full experience of deaf blind community, because that's where the greatest need is. And if we can crack that, we crack it for everyone. So I just want to stop this picking and choosing our a la carte version of inclusion, whether it's once the disability experience or the experience of human beings. And if I was to say anything, I can't wait for the day that we have disability voices at the highest levels in society talking about anything other than the disability
Yeah,
experience. Then I
yeah,
think we will have done our job, don't you?
absolutely. Thank you, Caroline. What a way to end. Tell your story, share your story. Everyone is valuable. Those are the key takeaways for me. And how about let's keep the future bright, because we've still got more to do. But I think let's put people at the heart of that can tell their story and make the changes, because everyone benefits. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure.